Nevis Hulme, raised in the Muir of Ord near Inverness. He's lived in Gairloch parish since 1980, when he went to work in Gairloch High School as a geography teacher and latterly as the depute head teacher. He's lived most of his life in Ross and Cromarty and collected place names from older inhabitants of his home township from the 90s to 2005. He's been tutored in Gaelic, the place names and the phonetics by Dr. Roy Wentworth from 1978 till his death in 2003. Reacquainted with and pursued place names study, having neglected it until retirement. You may like to know that his previous name book talk was in 2021 to the Scottish Place Name Society. But if you've read Sheet Lines, number 122, I'm sure you have, 3 years ago in December, Nevis's article, OS Name Books of Scotland, was a forerunner of what we're going to see, but he's developed that. So without further ado, Nevis, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Jerry. Well, welcome to my talk.
Share your screen before we...
Oh, sorry. How's that?
Lovely.
Welcome to my talk on the Scottish Ordnance Survey name books. I'm very sorry that I can't be there in vision, but I can assure you that is an accident rather than an intention. Now, I've promoted this as the name book equivalent of the greatest show on earth. I've had to leave a great deal out, but hopefully it will still fit the billing. This talk is a summary of my research on these name books. I've been looking at name books for over 30 years, but as this is a work in progress, I would welcome any corrections to what I'm about to cover. It may be worth mentioning at the outset that name books are where the Ordnance Survey wrote down details of names collected for inclusion on their mapping. I shall be talking exclusively about those for the first edition maps in the 19th century. I should also add that they are officially called the OS Object Name Books, but nowadays referred to as the Ordnance Survey Name Books. This is what I intend to cover. I'll go through the navigation of the online site and then look at the name books themselves along with their content, and finish by looking at the impact of the people contributing to them. You may wonder what is to be gained by looking at the name books. Well, there are many reasons. Where did the names come from? What do they mean, where relevant? Why are there changes between map editions? And so on. If you're interested in a specific area of Scotland, then relating the name books to Ordnance Survey maps for that place can be enlightening. Also, you may be interested in how the Ordnance Survey went about its work. I hope this talk will build an understanding of the content and compilation of the name books and make accessing particular information more straightforward. I'll start with the acknowledgements, which are given here at the top. I refer to these sites as NLS and Scotland's Places, the relevant section of the Historic Environment Scotland website. On the lower part of this slide is an explanation of the referencing system used online for the name books. All of our first edition name books are in the OS1 category, so this comes first. Each county in alphabetical order has been assigned a number, so Aberdeenshire is 1 and Wigtonshire is 35. Ross and Cromarty mainland, about which you'll hear quite a lot, shown here, is number 28, and each page in its volumes are referenced as OS1/28. This is followed by the volume number and then a page number. I've given the example on this slide for Ross and Cromarty mainland, volume 12, page 78. Before I move on, just like to say that the name book website is often updated, so what I say is correct up to the 1st of July this year. We'll now have a wee geography lesson of the old counties of Scotland. Most, if not all of you, will be familiar with some of these, but maybe not all. For example, in the southwest, I wasn't certain about Wigtonshire and Kirkcudbrightshire. The counties named on this map are those that are referred to through this talk, and there'll be a wee map just to remind you where each of them is as we come across them. This should be the page that you will see if you search for Scotland's places name books on a search engine. It lists all the counties of Scotland from which the individual volumes for the counties can be accessed. A search facility is available on all pages. It gives results for the entire Scotland's Places website, not just the name books, but it is easy to select the relevant results. The search facility examines the digital transcription of the name book content. These transcriptions are not complete, so the search results should be treated with caution. The search is not case sensitive, but in the case of Gaelic names, may need accents if transcribed correctly. Like with Word and Excel, accents cannot be typed into the search box, so this can be a nuisance. Even with the accent added, the second example here was not found for some reason. For each county, there is a list like this on the Scotland Places website. Note the description on the right, giving an indication of the parishes covered by each book. This provides a guide, but is not always accurate. I'll be using many examples from Ross and Cromarty mainland, so I shall use the abbreviation RCM to save repeating the full title. There's Ross and Cromarty mainland. Choosing one volume leads to a page like this. And clicking on one of the page numbers leads to a page like this. Here is the top of the page only. The image, which I'm indicating, is an actual page from a name book. It is possible to zoom in and out and to move on to adjacent pages easily. The transcriptions below are very useful, especially when writing is difficult to read, but I still usually go back to the original to be certain of what was written in the 19th century. There are mistakes and omissions, and oddly, the order of the entries on a page is sometimes mixed up. All this does not take away from the work of the transcribers, to whom we should be thankful for further helping to make the name books more accessible. The situation column, which I'm indicating in this name book, details the map sheet, plan, and trace for each name. The transcription at the bottom here only has the sheet number. Lower down the page, the layout looks like this, except for the map of Scotland that I've added. The related map section at the bottom can show additional incorrect maps, as here. Map sheet 31, Isle of Lewis. The insular part of Ross and Cromarty, or Lewis, is shown in addition to the mainland sheet 31. This happens with Ross and Cromarty and Inverness-shire that are split into different areas. I suspected that these map references had been generated automatically from the transcription, hence the error. Historic Environmental Scotland confirmed this just on Friday. This is why only the map number is given in the situation column of the transcription shown earlier. Clicking on the map details, annoyingly not the image as on the NLS site, will take you to a page showing an image of the map from where you can go to the NLS site. I've come back to the index page for the volume that I showed earlier. The right-hand column is the bottom of the online index. Note the title page for the name book and the index for the name book. It is odd that the title page usually appears towards the end rather than the start. I can only think that this may be so that there is no page 0 in the list. The arrangement seen here was what I had been used to, but delving further into the name books revealed other layouts. Having gone through the arrangement of name books online, I'll look at the name books themselves. I'll start this section by looking at the more common layout of name books already mentioned. This is the cover of RCM, remember, Ross and Cromarty Mainland, Volume 12, page 124, which is one of only 3 volumes of 25-inch plans in Gairloch Parish. It is typical of the information that is included on these title pages. As you will probably know, unpopulated areas were only mapped at 6 inches to the mile, unlike populated areas where coverage at 25-inch mapping was supposed to be carried out. This meant that 6-inch mapping was the norm for much of the Highlands and Islands. This is the first page of the index to this volume. Some indexes usefully give the sheet name. I'll start again. Some indexes usefully give the sheet numbers as well as the page numbers for each name. There are sometimes notes here, usually at the end of the index, indicating changes made since the names were first collected. This is an example of a neatly laid out record sheet of the collected names in RCM Volume 12. It has few changes or additional notes. I would say that in places with Gaelic or Gaelic-derived names, the better Gaelic was understood by the people giving the names, the fewer the annotations. This varied, I think, with the knowledge of those working on the recording of the names also. In Wester Ross, as here, names tended to be reliably reported. Note the signature at the bottom. This person was on the ground, responsible for the survey, checking the draft maps and collecting the place names. These examiners, as they were called, were not always Royal Engineer soldiers, known as sappers, as in this example. Many civilian assistants were also employed. Some examiners regularly signed pages, but many did not. The difference in handwriting helps distinguish those involved. While there were clear instructions for most actions, differences in how each examiner carried out the task can be detected. This page, in contrast to the previous one, is full of annotations concerning spelling and translations. Amendments cannot always be followed in the transcriptions, so reference to the original pages is important if interested in the stages through which a name form came to be printed on a map. This example is from Aberdeenshire, where clearly Gaelic names were not understood and led to a wide range of suggestions as to what the names were. Take the top example, Loch na Golan, described as a fine circular hill situated about a mile north of Etnach, excuse the pronunciation. Suggestions for the first term were lach, duck, lech, slab, lahoch, bog, but there were no mention of what I thought an obvious possibility, lac, hollow. Lac, L-A-C-K, is given on the page, and that's why it's strange that L-A-G, lac, hollow in Gaelic, is not made as a suggestion. I'll now look at the composition of a Wigtonshire name book, surveyed from 1845 to 49, and the earliest county in Scotland to be surveyed. I noticed that only pages 2 to 22 were indexed out of a total of 46 pages in the volume. and this led me to look further into it. The index pages on what were called Form 21 looked fairly like those I was used to. An additional column on the left-hand side giving the Form 136 page. These are the non-index numbers. Sorry, non-index pages. The non-index pages have much the same information as the index pages, so this seemed to have necessitated a great deal of copying. I think that the collected names were written up on these Form 136s initially, with their map location identified on the left-hand column. All pages using Form 136 have had the left-hand column amended to show plan and trace number. It shows that the procedures for name collection were evolving with experience. These forms are only found in the name books of the counties of Wigton, Kirkcudbright, Ross and Cromarty, Lewis, East Lothian, and some of the Mid Lothian volumes. Going by the dates of the survey of these counties, these forms only seem to have been used from 1845, when the Wigtonshire survey was commenced, to 1852-53. It may be that the Survey of Ireland used these forms, but I haven't had opportunity to view those name books. The names on this page were for Plan 8B, as shown here. Trace 5 of the 6-inch map. Here we have the Green Nose, a rather humorous name, on form. Just note for now, the two authorities, the first was a woodman, and the second given here, John Nevin and Ivy McIlwrick. That is the people, in this case, who gave the name to the Ordnance Survey examiners. Here we have the details of the Green Nose on form. No, we don't. This is referred to as Plan 8B in the name book, but published by the Ordnance Survey as Sheet 8. I don't know why there's a difference. I've added the trace divisions on this map as an example of how they can be useful for finding a place from the name books. Here we have the details of the Green Nose on Form 21. It will be noted that the plan and trace number are not included on this form. The situation column, in this case, is used for a written description rather than the map and trace number. Differences in the information on the two forms for one name can occur. Sometimes additional authorities have been entered, as here. Here's the actual content. It includes, and the descriptions can be different. I again caution relying on the transcription, even if reading the originals can be an effort. The transcription of the authorities on this page is inaccurate, as shown at the bottom of the slide. In the transcription column, lost my pointer. It includes a written source, Ainsley's map, 1782. This is his map of Wigton. I've checked, and the Green Nose does not appear on this, despite what the transcription says. I think this was a copy and paste error by the transcriber. I'll now look at what appears to be an oddity. There may be many other volumes like this, but so far, this is the only one of its type that I've seen. It is not devoted to names to be placed on maps, but to the proprietors and clergymen of the county. The printed form, Form 123, cannot be unique to Dumbartonshire, but is the only example seen to date. It lists the names of the owners of properties, in this case in the parish of Cumbernauld. The purpose of this is not clear, as these people are listed in the name lists for the relevant parish, so is another case of copying data. This note on a page from the same volume was written by Civilian Assistant D. Hannay to Major Bailey. It suggests that Hannay didn't have the name books for the area from which this information would have been taken, and he has used recall to create a list of proprietors. It also suggests that there are no clear instructions for the compilation of lists of proprietors, and that the civilian assistant here had been caught out not knowing that this list was required. At the end, he writes, "I was not aware that a list of proprietors were required," his English, "but in future I will attend to it." A further find in Dunbartonshire, volume 18, are lists of, quote, persons desirous of purchasing ordnance plans. If these were produced for other counties, again, I've still to find further examples. You will see that this form is handwritten, so this type of page may indeed be rare. This slide has a selection of Form 21s used for the collection of names. I've spent some time looking at different versions of these forms used in the name books, but there is not time to look at these here. I'm now going to look in detail at one area and how the name books for it were compiled. This map shows Ross and Cromarty in the centre. I'll be mentioning Gairloch quite a bit. This Gairloch should not be confused with one near the Clyde, although it is spelt differently. Notice for now Braymore, an estate to the south of the port of Ullapool. It is probably best known today as the name of a road junction and is adjacent to Curryhoch Gorge. Unlike some counties where name books were matched to the parish boundaries, this was not the case in Ross and Cromarty. Much of the information for this map was found from the RCM volume page online, but also by checking the name books themselves. Gairloch Parish, for example, their names were found in the volumes listed on this map. But many volumes are shared with other parishes, as in the case of volume 41, here, here, and here. Within a volume, the names of it for any parish are not always on concurrent pages. Jerry, before I carry on, is this coming through okay?
Absolutely, absolutely fine.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll continue. These index maps on the NLS website are useful to start identifying the maps required for a study of a parish. I knew that RCM map 94, the one circled middle left, was partly in Gairloch Parish, and looking at it on the NLS website, I found that it has two Gairloch Parish names. I then knew what to look for in Namebook Volume 44. I checked map 95 to its east. Here is the part of Gairloch Parish on RCM sheet 95. No names for Gairloch. This is a 3-chain right-angled triangle of land that lies in the parish. Here we have the settlements of Gairloch Parish. The largest is the village of Gairloch in the middle here. And looking at it on the NLS sorry, the largest village is Gairloch, with about 1,000 residents. Most settlements are on the coast, with Kinloch being an exception. It's right next to Benay National Nature Reserve. The 25-inch plans for the parish are shown on this slide as grey numbered rectangles. There is no reason for there being no 25-inch plans in areas with settlement within the ellipses on this slide. They just weren't mapped at that scale. On Braymore Estate, that place pointed out earlier south of Ullapool, there is 25-inch mapping where there is virtually no settlement. Indeed, one map and not even one building on it. I suspect that Sir John Fowler of Forth Rail Bridge and Metropolitan Railway fame paid for this mapping. I suppose this part is digressing a little. This map is of the same area in the previous slide, but showing the map and name book numbers. The red numbers are the map sheets, 6-inch map sheets, and the numbers in black are the 6-inch name books. Those in blue are the 25-inch name books. For me, sorting this out proved helpful in my studies. While name book volumes stretched over several maps, all the names for any map were within one volume. In contrast, Aberdeenshire, for example, was arranged with each parish in a volume or volumes, so spreading some maps over a number of name books. I'm going to look in more detail at how the names were recorded for one map, that of sheet 56, on the south side of Loch Gairloch. It is highlighted along with the other maps that are covered by Namebook RCM volume 39. This shows the area of map 56 in relation to the surrounding area. Here is the first edition map from the NLS website. I've used this to examine the distribution of names in Namebook RCM volume 39. The northeast corner was surveyed at 25-inch, so most names for there are in another volume. I'm ignoring these for the review of the names. This shows all the entries in volume 39 for this map sheet. I'll zoom in so you can see part of this more clearly. Looking at the left map, the numbers show the page number and the entry on that page. So, for example, looking at 109.4, that is the fourth entry on page 109 of Namebook 39, and just to the north is 110.1, page 110, first entry. On the right, I've shown the entries grouped by page. The polygon around 109, for example, contains all the page 109 names. We would expect the entries to proceed in a logical pattern. Looking south on the coast, we have page 112, 111, 109, 110, and inland 107, 108. Not exactly in order, but not too bad. With the base map removed, these are the page polygons for the whole map. It's all a bit of a búrach. You would think that the pages would be within the trace divisions at least, but this is not the case, as you can see here. Also, notice how page 91, 115, and 123 are split. I could have added more arrows. For example, page 114 I have shown as one area, but really should have been split. How did the examiners, that is the sappers and civilian assistants, keep a track of all the names? I've not done a join the dots puzzle for a while, and in this case, it's difficult to see any pattern. This shows the links between the entries of each page. So, for example, 110.1, 110.2, 0.3, 0.4, and so on across the whole map. I'm now showing the links between the last entry of one page and the first entry of the next page. For example, the last entry of page 109 is linked to the first entry of 110, again, and so on. You can clearly see how the locations jump about between pages. This has been seen in other counties, so if viewing name books, be prepared for feeling lost. I'll now have a wee look at the descriptive remarks given for names in the name books. The descriptions were not used to locate the places on the map, as I used to think, but were drawn up by the examiners from the map. To prove this point, on Lewis, I found the location of a place, it wasn't the only one, relating to lettering on the map itself, as I show on the left-hand side of this slide. Tol Iela Hyoga, a curious name. On the northern side of the plan, 23 chains north of the letter U in Uig parish name, and 55 chains north-northeast of Valtus village. This was actually in the situation column of the name book rather than in the descriptive remarks column, something we saw earlier. On looking at the map, I couldn't find Uig parish name printed, making the description even more unusual. Moving to the right-hand map, and we're back on sheet 56. This shows the place or places used to describe a name. For example, the names I'm indicating, 111.1, 102.1, 0.2, and 0.4, are all described with reference to Balashias, 112, entry 3. Descriptions take the form a promontory on the sea coast at Balashias, a small hollow on the east side of Balashias, and so on. I show on this slide just the places described in relation to South Airedale here. South Airedale Township, and all these places are described as being a certain distance and direction from South Airedale. The red link heads to the village along the coast used to locate South Airedale. This shows the wider area and the main names used for descriptions. The main townships, Balashias, South Airedale, Openan, Port Henderson, Badachrow. The main river, Owen Ruag, and a large loch, Loch Clar, are used repeatedly to locate names. So, for example, Owen Ruag itself is named in relation to South Airedale, and this place on the coast, Portnaskar. So it's a river a certain distance from South Airedale and its mouth reaching the sea at Portnaskar. Oh, sorry. In all, the descriptions are not very useful. Another aspect of the descriptive remarks is the meaning of the names where this had been established. Some entries, but not generally in Westeros, include extensive descriptions associated with the name, often taken from written sources, and sometimes notes from a survey of archaeological remains are included. The owners of properties and other additions sometimes reveal interesting historical information. Now I'll turn to the authorities or sources of the names. On this slide are the earliest instructions known to exist. This dates from 1884, 9 years after the survey in Ross and Cromarty mainland. For names generally, the following are the best individual authorities and should be taken in the order given: owners of property, estate agents, clergymen, postmasters and schoolmasters, if they have been in the area, if they've been some time in the district, rate collectors, road surveyors, borough and county surveyors, gentlemen residing in the district. Respectable inhabitants of some positions should be consulted. Small farmers or cottagers are not to be depended on, even for the names of places they occupy, especially as to the spelling, but a well-educated and intelligent occupier is, of course, a good authority. I've highlighted in red people who would have been available to assist the Ordnance Survey in a rural Highland area, such as the parish of Gairloch. For much of it, the only people with sufficient knowledge would be those regarded as the least reliable category. Small farmers, who would be mostly crofters in this case. Those higher up the order of preference tended to lack knowledge of Gaelic to be of value, although this was not always the case. Gazetteers, parish records, maps and charts were also used, but in Westeros I have found just one or two such uses, despite there being records available. Many names in the Highlands and Islands, however, had never been written down before the Ordnance Survey came along. I'll show you examples of authorities from the area just looked at and from near to Pullew, shown on this map. The images show the names along with the person giving them. The top example here shows the name Glochnan Coulk, followed by Mr. Kenneth Mackenzie, South Airedale, who, despite being a lowly crofter, supplied the bulk of the names around South Airedale. John Amos and William MacLean provided only 5 names, also given by Kenneth Mackenzie. The last example, Anthony MacClement, provided names in the area too. These 3 contributors, John Amos, William MacLean, Anthony MacClement, were gamekeepers and farmers. In all, Kenneth Mackenzie provided 158 names in the area shown from sheet 56. Those make up the bulk of the names given on that map. The other people gave names that had been anglicised as opposed to the others given by Kenneth Mackenzie. The anglicised names are shown at the bottom right of this slide and include 3 townships names: Openham, Port Henderson, Badachrow, 1 burn, 1 wood, and the descriptive name, the school. This example comes from Pullew. The authority to note here at the top is Osgood Mackenzie, who was the founder of the internationally renowned Inverewe Garden and a great supporter of Gaelic. There are in the name books many examples of names being changed by other people when gentlemen had seen the first copies of maps. Sometimes drafts were sent before publication for these people to check. Some of the changes took place between the first and second editions of the county series. These also occurred between the first printing of the first edition and a later printing. Both issues can be accessed in most cases on the NLS website. The change here is from the first edition to the second, requested or demanded by Osgood Mackenzie. This is a loch near Pullew, for which its meaning or significance, as it's often put in the name books, is given as unknown. In this case, I don't know why its name has not been translated, as it is not a difficult name. Pol Uy Chro, the pool of the channel of the Cattlefold. This is a good example of the construction of Gaelic place names linking one place to adjacent ones. The revised name, Loch na Archdebeca, the Loch of the Wee Promontory, it is not possible to tell now which is correct. I have not managed to find time to examine this on the ground or from aerial photographs, looking for evidence of a cattlefold in the area, or to study the rivers in and out to determine if one or other may be described as a slow-moving channel linking two lochs. These are the sorts of interesting adventures that the name books and place name studies throw up. This is the wording in the index of the name book for this change of name, and is used for many, many others. Despite the suggestion that the name change for larger scales requires further investigation, most around the country seem to end up on the larger scales in the revised form. This authority here is Osgood Mackenzie, to be used for 1-inch purposes only, further investigation to be made during the revision of the larger scales by order of the Director General, and many examples are dated the 12th of August 1895. David Walker wrote in a 2011 edition of Karst about the wording in relation to Colonel Farquharson, the Director General of the Ordnance Survey at the time. The Colonel's influence is interesting. More on this another day. The actual entry in the name book for this name is shown at the bottom of this slide. Red often indicates a later addition to a name book. This one came 20 years after the names were first collected. This page is just to give an example of the trouble that the OS went to in determining the best name for an object. It relates to a loch in Caithness, where it is decided that the name should be Curl Loch, C-A-O-L, and not Cool Loch, C-U-I-L. Some of the wording of the correspondence is interesting. The loch featured in a Court of Session case because it was an important boundary point. The letter, with its missing last page, bottom left on the slide, appears to have come from the town clerk of Thurso. To quote a little of the letter complaining about the incorrect naming, we have, relating to the south end of the loch, quote, which the natives sometimes call Cool Loch Moor, and quote, I may mention that neither Captain Gunn nor Mr. Marwick Sutherland are good authorities, and it is a pity your Mears men did not obtain more reliable authorities. To quote Moore, Marwick Sutherland may have seen Cool Loch, but he knows nothing about it. Such contempt. The response of the Ordnance Survey's Examination Office, shown bottom right, details the analysis and decision on the name of the loch. This, of interest to those who like form numbers, is on a form 225. To finish, as I did on a previous talk on name books, I was looking up the now ruined house where my mother was born and was delighted to find that my great-great-grandfather was an informant as tenant of Langley's, a farm in Aberdeenshire. There are so many fascinating gems to be found in the name books. I hope that this talk has given you a flavour of what they have to offer and the many aspects contained within them. We are so fortunate that nearly all name books survived in Scotland. I've mentioned other research that I've carried out on the name books. Included in this work are the names themselves, which I've barely mentioned this evening, despite being my main interest. I hope to share more of this in sheet lines sometime. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Nevis, thank you very much indeed. And thanks to your great-great-grandfather as well. Isn't it nice to have your forebears involved in some small way? I've enjoyed that feeling myself with my English grandfather and his first war maps. That was a tour de force. Thank you so much. And I've learned a few bits of Gaelic pronunciation that I should have known before, but was nothing like the correct way you said it. So thank you for that as well. Do we have any questions, please? Michiel Rademacher.
As a foreigner, I happen to have an interest in the Gaelic languages, and I thank you for the pronunciation lessons. Given that the spelling is very awkward to foreigners, if I may say so. I have another question regarding the people who gave the names. I can imagine that it was a bit problematic to in the class society of the 19th century to ask crofters, but the crofters were the ones who lived in the most distant parts and who certainly knew the names. Could it be that the problem was that most crofters probably couldn't read or write?
Yes, that's the case. And in fact, there's no saying that Kenneth Mackenzie could write, but the Ordnance Survey the examiners were assisted by people who had knowledge of Gaelic. They may have taken around, say, the minister from the area who would have been able to help in writing down the names.
They were, what's the word for a translator?
Yes, yeah.
Transliterator, rather.
A transliterator. Maybe some of the sappers had some knowledge of Gaelic, and certainly Colonel Farquharson, who got himself involved very much when he was an examination officer, if I remember his title correctly. He certainly developed a knowledge and was involved in correcting, as he saw it, some of the names. But I think what happened was that the landowner would have been approached, and he would have, maybe through his factor, his estate agent, would have suggested people who may be able to assist because they were known to be reliable people. And the Ordnance Survey didn't have any alternative because there was no one else who would be able to tell them the hill names and those that went, say, on rental records and such like.
The one thing which fascinates me is that these name books were made up in the time when Ross and Cromarty still were divided. Is there any relation to the many little enclaves of Cromartyshire?
Sorry, what was your question?
About the fact that Ross and Cromarty were different counties. Is there any notion of the many small enclaves in Ross?
It was certainly mapped, so there was acknowledgement of that. But in terms of the name books, it was just regarded as one county, as it became in 1889.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and just to say about the spelling of Gaelic, it is something that causes all sorts of confusion, but compared with English, it, take O-U-G-H. How do you pronounce O-U-G-H? Well,
oh, many different things.
But Gaelic is far more consistent in its spelling.
Really, like the use of E and I, just to give the slender pronunciation of a consonant. But as a foreigner, I never know whether to pronounce the E or I at all.
Well, I'm not saying it's all entirely easy, but it is consistent.
It is consistent, that's true.
There might be a few Englishmen that feel that as well. Thank you very much, Michiel, for your questions. Do we have anyone else, please? Yes, Rob Wheeler.
Nevis, I was struck by your reference to your mentioning names being identified or places being identified with regard to lettering on the map. Now, at the time the name book was being compiled, the printed map, I assume, did not exist. So what they are referring to is presumably the manuscript map. And in the case of the Uig parish name, that I believe was a 6-inch map. Was it?
Right. Well, I imagine it was the manuscript map. So maybe when they came to print it, the Uig parish name didn't appear. But there is a lot of mapping at 25-inch in Lewis, and that area, although it's not intensively populated, does have mapping at 25-inch as well. So this is what makes it so strange. The location is referred to a parish name that's on a map that, as you say, probably hadn't even been finalized. And the other interesting thing is just the amount of 25-inch mapping that was done in Lewis. I know that it came about because Sir James Matheson, the owner of Lewis at the time, paid for or somehow managed to persuade the Ordnance Survey to map that area out of order. I know that the Ordnance Survey weren't happy in being sent off to Lewis to do the mapping at that stage. But yes, there is a 25-inch map of only in the first edition, if I remember rightly, for that area.
So are you implying that the name books offer evidence for the existence of maps at a scale where nothing was printed?
Now you'll have to say that again. I didn't understand that.
You were talking about the name books, these references, perhaps in some cases being to a 25-inch survey. And I wondered whether you were implying that they might be references to a 25-inch survey which was never printed.
Well, I know that one was printed because I've looked at it on the NLS website. It's a coloured map. It's a first edition 25-inch, but there's no sign of Uig. The area in question is a peninsula, and it's not an obvious place you would actually put a parish name. So I don't know, unless it's on the margin. No, I didn't actually check that.
Yes.
Yes.
That might make sense.
Yes, it could be. That could be it. It's funny, I only just thought of that just now.
Is this the Uig in Skye?
No, a different Uig. This is Uig on the west side of Lewis.
Utterly unmappy question. I just remember camping there as a kid.
There's a ferry port, Uig, in the north end of Skye, yeah.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
David Walker. David, over to you.
And can you show my screen? Is that possible?
Can we share your
Can
screen?
you share my screen?
Yes, are you going to show us something?
If I click share screen, I've got the John Farquharson comments.
Let me just, I'll make you co-host for a minute. Now you have it, David.
Right.
Press share screen now.
Yes. So can you see, there's a picture of Belnabodder on the right. And
we're not seeing your screen, David.
We're not seeing your screen.
Ah.
Can you start your slideshow or do what you want?
It's on my screen. It's one picture and it's on my screen.
Yes, but we're not seeing that.
Ah. So press the share screen button.
I've done that.
Okay, have you started the image in whatever you're sharing?
Yes, not to worry. It's on my screen and I've clicked share screen. But all I wanted to mention is that I took a copy of John Farquharson's comments because I thought he was being rather uppish. He was not a distinguished Director General, and he thought to assert himself by telling the lads on the shop floor how to spell a few names, including the place where he'd been brought up at Belnabodder. And so I've simply got a copy of the page that Nevis mentioned, asking for certain names to be altered by order of the DG. This is the 10th of August, 95 or 96. And the bit I liked best was the bit that Nevis showed us, where they said they would use the Director General's name for 1-inch purposes only. Further investigations to be made during the revision of the larger scales. And I was hoping that we would find that they ended up with the Director General's name on one of the scales and a different name on the other one, but I can't prove that yet. So you can't see the picture yourselves. I'll leave you to it. Thank you. Thank you, Nevis.
Well, that's interesting. As I said in the talk there, I've been looking at Colonel Farquharson, and the interesting thing is that Colonel Farquharson changed his name when he became, I forget the place that he inherited, but he changed his name from, pardon?
Was it Coracree?
Yes, it could well be. He changed his name from Macpherson. And the interesting thing is, and I haven't seen anyone note this before, he was an examination officer for the Ordnance Survey in the Highlands. And that's where he developed his skills. So you will actually find him in the name books as J.M. Macpherson. And then he comes back as Director General and has a great influence on names that are changed. And I have pages and pages of notes on all the changes that he made in Lewis. And then he had an influence over names in, he had an influence over names in Inverness Shire, Argyllshire, Ross and Cromarty mainland, Aberdeenshire, and so on and so forth. He was just all over the place, putting his oar in or agreeing to changes in various parts of the country.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's fantastic, fascinating. You found the ones for Perthshire or Aberdeenshire where he was born,
Right.
but there are others all around the country, in the Highlands in particular, Highlands and Islands.
Thank you, Nevis.
Thank you, David, for your question. I'm just going to remove the control there so that we don't confuse the system too much. I'm sorry we couldn't see what you were trying to show us there. But Nevis, I noticed on your running order, I'll come to you, Peter, in just one tick.
Thank you.
Your running order under 58, you had a sort of question to yourself. Did you want to mention that? About
Oh yeah, yes.
Ross and Cromarty.
Oh, sorry. What was that?
You say there are 15 6-inch sheets in Ross and Cromarty with
Oh
letters
yes,
to their numbers.
yes.
Do you want me to read that, or will you take it?
Well, if you could read it, because I can't just lay my hands immediately on it. If you have it there.
Okay, Nevis says, Rob, I don't know, perhaps if you might have a thought on this. There are 15 6-inch sheets in Ross and Cromarty with letters appended to their numbers. Most cover a small area of coast, but 2 in Gairloch Parish, 12A and 19A, cover large areas of land. Does anyone know why this numbering system was adopted?
Yes, in other words, why did they not work out what numbers they needed, and instead of as an afterthought, oh, we've got an extra bit of land we've not covered, we better put a map there and we'll have to call it 12A, 19A or whatever.
I guess it depends. Yes, Rob, please.
Well, part of the answer surely is that until the survey was completed, they didn't know exactly where the coastline fell. And so they presumably came up with a numbering system which they thought was going to cover all the area concerned, and then found that there were funny little bits where the coastline extended further than they thought, and in consequence they needed extra sheets to which they gave letters. That doesn't explain the 2 big ones you mentioned, I will grant.
Yeah, yes. I certainly know that, for example, where 19A is, it's the north end of the peninsula I live on, that maps prior to the Ordnance Survey gave it quite a different shape, but I still think there was sufficient there for them to realise that they would have needed a map. But it could be to do with projection, to do with accuracy of maps. Yeah, I can't really think any other reason than you've given.
If I may interrupt,
Yeah.
I've I've studied quite a lot of the numbering systems, and it's quite usual also for numbers not to be existent. So I think Rob's idea is very good.
Mm.
Well, thank you for that. Peter Lush has a question.
Yes, it may be that my question was touched on in the Sheet Lines article, which isn't fresh in my memory. But what I was wondering was whether any of the examiners kept diaries or wrote reports to their superior officers describing the contacts they had with the local people, giving them the names. Was there that sort of record in any form?
Well, I have no idea. It would be wonderful if there were some record. I'm really surprised that we don't know, for example, when exactly General Roy, as he became, was doing his military survey in our area. I say about 1750, but surely someone was making a note of where he was in some form. In the same way, these examiners, surely of all the examinations across the country, surely someone kept a diary or was noted as being in an area at a particular time doing various things. I know of none, and I know of no reports to the Ordnance Survey, but then it's not something I've looked into.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone for a final question for Nevis? Nevis, we're still not seeing you, by the way.
I'm sorry about that.
Can you put in an appearance?
I've clicked various things and done various things, and it just I don't understand it.
Oh, well, there you go. There was a brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. It would have added just that touch of perfection.
Well, I must also include in my acknowledgements, which I missed out to start with, is the contribution that my wife made. She will be horrified to say that I'm saying this, but my wife Janet was very helpful in listening to this, making various comments and amending all the work that I'd written. So it's if it was a brilliant presentation, I think she should take a lot of credit for it.
Well, look, thank you very much once again. Nevis, a heck of a lot of work ongoing, and a brilliant summary of it. Is this much expanded over that article 3 years ago in Sheetlines?
It is, and it has a different emphasis. I didn't cover the actual composition or of the name books in that article. It was more.
I shall read it again with great interest.
Well, and the talk, which is on the Scottish Place Names Society website, is also looks at other aspects for the same area that I concentrated on in Gairloch, looking at how reliable the names are. And the interesting thing is that the names that were collected are, to put a figure on it, something like 85% accurate. They're extremely accurate, because that Roy Wentworth, who you mentioned at the start, who tutored me in Gaelic and phonetics and so on, he collected these names from people who will not have seen the Ordnance Survey maps. And besides, even if they had, you just don't remember vast numbers of names. Their knowledge of these names were 85% the same as the Ordnance Survey.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ordnance Survey were reliable, and the local people agreed with what they had found.
Thank you once again for all your work in preparing this magnificent tour of the name books. I think you should also consider, Nevis, perhaps next year, doing us a Scottish map lovers tour of Gaelic pronunciations.
Well, I don't know where you would start with that.
Well, with a little fodder over the A. Oh, no, that's an Irish expression, isn't it? But thank you very much. Can I, in closing, as well as thanking you, Peter Enor's visage came on my screen just now. I hope you haven't gone, Peter. Are you here? Peter Enor has been a tour de force in bringing into print the latest Historic Towns Trust map, which is at Bath, his hometown. And we were pleased as a society to co-sponsor it. As a result of that, it is now published slightly ahead of time and is available from the HTT Historic Towns Trust website, where, as a Charles Close member, Nevis.
I just stopped video and restarted it, which I did many times when we were speaking before the talk.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is the speaker.
This is Nevis Hulme. Let me just finish this important announcement, Nevis, because all of the Historic Towns Trust maps, including the new one, that's a range of about 17, I think, are available to us as members for 15% discount, and that has now been extended to the end of October. So not just the next few days of September, but the whole of next month as well. But do it now, otherwise you'll forget. They're 15% off each of their prices, and you're going to ask me what the prices are, and I can't remember. Sorry, but have a look at the Historic Towns Trust website, and the code is CCS24 to get your discount. Thank you. That's what I was going to say. But Nevis, how nice to see you.
Great to see you, Nevis. David Walker here.
Hello. Yes. The mysteries of Zoom.
There's always one.
Idea why it decided to work now. Was it because I was sharing and it didn't like to share and show me? I don't know.
It shouldn't have been that, but you're probably right. You're probably right. And there is Peter Enor as well. Did you hear my announcement, Peter?
I did indeed, and I'm afraid I have to correct you. I'm the other Enor.
Peter, I'm so sorry. I'm thinking.
Sorry, no problem.
How embarrassing. I'm so sorry. I know both of you. And
Yeah.
Peter is, of course, our independent examiner or auditor, if you like, for the Society for many years, and is up in Alnwick, where he helped us have a wonderful annual meeting in perfect weather in a week of dreadful weather. It was quite extraordinary. And we visited the Farne Islands, where I hear the puffins are flourishing. But I'm so sorry, Peter. I was in my excitement of talking about your brother John in Bath. I got you muddled up. So sorry.
That's right. Well, of course, I was instrumental in working on the Alnwick map a few years ago.
Indeed.
And my older brother, I have to point this out, John, who lives in Bath, and I come from Bath as well, decided that he really had to keep up with his younger brother.
Yes, I know he was
now a Bath now.
I think he was jealous of our sponsorship, so it
Yes,
cost us another £1,000.
yeah.
But the Alnwick map, I take it, is still in print.
Oh yes.
So if you didn't get one then, you can get it now at 15% off. Do you happen to know the prices?
I think they're normally £9.99.
£9.99, yes. Very good value anyway, but at 15% off, unbeatable. And you can have as many as you like at the discounted price. I'm going to wrap this up now because it's been a long day for Nevis, I know, and certainly here as well. But very nice to see you all. Some very familiar faces. Thank you all. We had 16 at the peak, and most of us are still here. So keep up the research, Nevis. Wonderful stuff. And I'm semi-serious about that Gaelic pronunciation course you're going to start. The CCS members.
Well, I'll just say Gertig, which means maybe.
I thought it translated as get out of here. Thank you so much. I'm going to say a very good night to you, and see you perhaps in October for our next talk on the 8th. Check your newsletters as they come in. Thank you all, and a very good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
And in Gaelic,
Aicheva.
thank you.
Aicheva.
Good night, Nevis.